Hi, everybody, and welcome to SplitMetrics and Moburst webinar about conversion rate optimization with A/B testing throughout the app lifecycle. Today we have a very expert guest, Gilad Bechar from Moburst. Hi, Gilad, how are you?
Great, how are you?
I'm great too. I'm very excited about our webinar because I think we have plenty of insights prepared. So I can't wait to start. Let's maybe have a quick recap on what we're going to talk about while people are still gathering. So here's our agenda for today. We're going to talk about building the right strategy, about maximizing the chances that live results will match the test results. Then we're going to talk about winning with no winner. Also how to lower cost per download in Apple search ads with A/B testing. And obviously we're going to cover conversion rate optimization process throughout apps lifecycle, concentrating on each stage of apps lifecycle. And at the end, we're going to have a little Q&A session. So please leave your questions in Ask a Question tab. Then at the end of the webinar, during Q&A, we're going to check all your questions. And also during the Q&A itself, you can obviously keep asking questions in the chat. So it's 8:02, I guess we probably should start because we have a lot to cover. So without further ado, let's dive in. I'm going to mute myself to cause any...
Amazing. All right. So basically, we will start in here by talking a bit more about the rules, the playground, what we can do basically when we're thinking about screenshots. So basically, the very basic is that we have portrait and landscape formats when we're thinking about iOS, the iPhone operating system. There are two main pages that we need to make sure that we are kind of covering in this specific realm of the playground rules, so to speak. We can choose portrait and we can use landscape, and the impact of choosing portrait or landscape will change dramatically between the different platforms. So if you're thinking about portrait, just for example, on the search page, what you're seeing on the left, this is kind of where you're going to see 3 screenshots. And on those 3 screenshots, this will be kind of the visible part for the users. So they won't going to be able to see screenshot number 4, 5, and 6, and so on. On the product page itself, when you are driving traffic directly to the App Store, on user acquisition, for example, they will only see, as you can see on the right, a screen and a half, a screen and let's say 2/3 of the screen, which means it will be very different messaging. The messaging strategy will be very different if we are choosing portrait format. If we're going with landscape, it's much easier, just like you can see on the lower part of the screen, when we are talking about the fact that you have the same kind of layout on both the product page and the app page itself. So whether it's the search page results or whether it's the app page, it looks very, very similar. So if we are hopping to the next page, you'll be able to see kind of the design layout. And on the design layout, we are talking about the fact that if you're choosing portrait, and this is only kind of an example for showing 5 screenshots, we are talking about the fact that 3 will be visible on portrait and only 1 will be visible on landscape. So really prioritize well what's supposed to be on the first screenshot if you're choosing landscape, because around 70% of the users won't going to scroll deeper than that, which means they will just see the first glimpse, and the first glimpse on the product page itself is the 3 screenshots on portrait and only 1 screenshot on landscape. And it really depends kind of what is the strongest suit to put on those sets of screens. If we're moving to the next screen, you'll be able to kind of see the video element. So basically, if we're going to play the video in here, you will be able to see on the left, you'll see the portrait without any video. And on the right, you'll be able to see what happens when we do have a video next to it. So on the portrait mode, if we have a video, you will see video plus 2 screenshots. If we're talking about the landscape mode, you will be able to see only the video. So if you have a landscape video, you won't be able to see any of the screenshots. You'll be able to see them only if you're actually going into the app page itself. And around 70% from search traffic will not go to the app page itself. They will make their decision on the search page results, and therefore it's really, really critical how you are utilizing the messaging around the video. If you are utilizing video, obviously it impacts also the sets of screenshots themselves. If we are moving forward to the next slide, you'll be able to see how it looks within the app page itself. So this will be very relevant for any user acquisition kind of campaigns. If we are hitting the play button, you'll be able to see that we have one video on the left, which is kind of what happens when the users are coming in, and it's kind of auto-played on mute. So you'll see what happens when it's on portrait on the left and on landscape on the right. On both of them, it's going to be auto-played on mute as long as you have enough bandwidth for the device. And basically, as you can see in the product page itself, it's also very, very different. So you'll only be able to see half of the first screenshot together with the portrait, or 0 of the screenshots on landscape. So again, video will make a very big impact on the conversion optimization. If you're going to decide to utilize that asset, it's not mandatory, not on iOS and not on Android. It is recommended, however, as long as you're testing that properly, because again, it can also get you, like the impact of that could be very significant for good or bad. If we're driving into the next page, you can also enjoy something that we call the hybrid gallery. The hybrid gallery, if you want to see a great example of that, you can look for Candy Crush Saga. I think that they're currently utilizing a landscape video plus portrait screenshots. So that's just another thing that you can utilize as part of the strategy. But again, you have to test that to make sure that it's the right fit for your app, because we saw some amazing results with that, and we also saw some apps that tried to use that, and it didn't really play nicely for them. So I think that this is definitely something that just so you'll know that from the rules of the playground, so to speak, this is something that you can do. If we will drive to the next slide, another thing that we are kind of taking in consideration when designing the screenshots is the light mode and dark mode. This is another thing that iOS 14 brought to the table. So we just need to make sure that it looks great for both of them. And sometimes, just like playing with the contrast, you will be able to see that some sets look much better on the darker mode or on the lighter mode. We just need to make sure that it fits both. So these are kind of the playground rules for iOS. If we're diving into Android, Android is a bit more of a mess, and it also allows you to have some more flexibility about how to do the different elements. So let's hit the next slide, please, and we will be able to see what happening here. So basically on Android, the reason I'm saying that this is a mess, because you have a lot of different Android versions. On iOS, all of the devices keep on being updated, so all of them, or let's say 90–95% of them are using already iOS 14, which means they are all in the same version. On Android, you have multiple versions, a lot of devices that cannot upgrade to the newest Android versions, and therefore you have two different modes. You have the before and after. The after is the more up-to-date one. The before are the older type of devices, and we need to kind of take in consideration both of them. And those are different layouts, and obviously we need to see where most of our audience, if it's with the newer devices or with the older devices, really depending on the markets that we are doing the marketing in. If we're moving to the next slide, you will be able to see that the older devices will actually, when they're hitting on the video or in preview video, it will open YouTube, and within YouTube it will open the video. In the newer devices, in the newer operation systems of Android, you will be able to see that it's auto-played on mute, very similar to what it is currently on iOS. And most of the devices today, at least all of the new devices today, are obviously with the newer version, and therefore video becoming more and more important on the autoplay on mute, because it's something that just grabs the user's attention when they are going into the App Store. And in Google Play, and in Google Play, when you're diving into that, you'll be able to see that both in the app page and in the search page, again, the video is very, very prominent. If we're moving to the next slide, you'll be able to see portrait and landscape orientation. We have that in here. So basically, again, we can choose portrait, we can use landscape, very similar to iOS, but on top of that, we can use many, many, many other options. And when I'm referring to other options, we are going to move to the next slide, you'll be able to see that we can also use cubes, just for example, and you can use landscape and portrait together, which is something that iOS don't allow you to do. So the flexibility there is giving us much more room for playing with our assets. In the next slide, you will be able to see even more options about how you can actually think about telling the different messaging and the design style. At the end of the day, you can choose whatever ratio that you want. And therefore, the biggest question is what are the messages that the users will be able to digest before hitting the get button of like download or obviously not downloading the product. Usually, most of the users are spending 3 to 6 seconds in the App Store page, and then they need to make a decision if they want to download this app, yes or no. Obviously, we want them to choose give us a shot, give us a try, and therefore the first few messages going to make the biggest impact. So playing with those assets and kind of optimizing those assets going to be very, very critical in order to maximize the impact of conversion optimization. Till now, I just wanted to show you kind of making sure that we are covering all of the playground rules, iOS and Android, to make sure that you're kind of seeing the entire options about what we can play with. In the next slide, you'll see kind of the idea behind that of what we want to prioritize when thinking about the best possible conversion and then to the lowest impact on conversion. So the number one asset that is the most expensive asset, unfortunately, video is always more expensive to produce than screenshots or icon. It's much more time consuming, and obviously it takes longer to see how we are telling the right story with a video. But video will also have the biggest impact if it's done right. And when I'm talking about how it's done right, the idea in here is to try to make sure that we are getting in the first 2 to 5 seconds. This is kind of where we are getting the user with the most amazing values, showing them the different unique selling proposition, why they should download the app right away, what are the main things that are going to get us to get the user excited about giving us a shot. Now, from the other end, if the budget is very, very low, and you can't afford to have a beautiful video, and you're just trying to do that with a very cheap option with Fiverr or with these type of services, just please check before you're actually launching something, because I have to say, we saw videos that are actually reducing the conversion by 25% and not just increasing the conversion by 40%. And this is something that is not just, hey, we just created that, let's just put it live and hope for the best. Please check the before and after, even if you are using that directly on the platform, because we want to make sure that we are maximizing the impact on conversion, and the video is going to be a very, very impactful kind of an asset. The next assets that you can see in here that on the prioritization is screenshots. Obviously, this is something that this is kind of where we invest most of our efforts, because you can actually play with the order of the screens, how to actually tell the story, how to actually make it come to life. We can play with different design styles, with different kind of 3D pop-ups coming out of the screen, showing different value propositions. Why should the user download the app right away? And playing with all of the different components there. Portrait landscape, we have many things that we can play and test there. Icon will still have another 7 to 12% impact about both the discoverability and conversion, so it can definitely play a significant part. And the last priority will probably be for the feature graphic for the video. So if you chose to do a video, the feature graphic is kind of the poster frame about before the video is being played, and it can also help us. But regarding the priority, video will probably have the highest impact, screenshot is the second impact, icon will be the third one, and feature graphic, if you have a video, will be the fourth one. It doesn't mean that this is the order that we want to actually test, just because testing with screenshot assets going to be much cheaper, so we can actually play with different order of assets. And based on the testing of screenshots, we can actually create much better materials on the video, because if we have the learnings about what works for us in the screenshots and whatnot, we can actually create much better videos from the get-go, and because of that, saving on the cost structure of creating a video. So it really depends on the growth strategy that you're building, but basically these are the elements that are probably going to make the best impact possible on your growth. If you want to see a plan about how we are usually creating this kind of a test plan, just for example, we can hit the next slide and show you this kind of example that we created for an app. In this specific case, it was a plan that we created for Audible by Amazon. So the idea there was to actually create 3 different options for the screenshots design, to actually test the 3 different design styles. What will actually make the most sense to whoever of you that know Audible? I guess that this is most of you, because Audible is a huge brand. So Basically, the first one was focusing on content, like showing the amount of content that you have in Audible. The second option kind of focused on showing the different users when they're commuting in the train, or when they're running outside, or in a lot of different situations about how and when you can actually utilize Audible once while you're doing other things. And the third option was actually talking about utilizing all of the influencers that are currently in the narrators of the sound of Audible. And the idea there to test 3 different approaches, like what will get the users the most excited. Once we are creating those 3 different assets, we want to actually test them one against the other. We are launching that with a Facebook ad campaign, because usually the traffic on Facebook is very similar to the traffic on Apple and Google. The reason that I'm saying that is that it's 1 to 3 or 1 to 4 clicks per download, which means anywhere between 25 to 33% on average conversion, which is very similar to the conversion that you're going to be getting on the platforms, on the Google Play itself, and on the App Store, comparing to Media Buy, where it's going to be 100 clicks per download or 1,000 clicks per download. So again, Facebook will be much preferred on that specific note. Once we are getting the test results, we are seeing what works best for us. Obviously, we are using SplitMetrics because it just helps us to get all of the data that we need in order to conclude the right decision. We are seeing what is the best type of assets that are working for us, and then we are starting to play with that. So stage number 4 is playing with the same winner, portrait and landscape, to see how that will actually impact the conversion. Once we've done that, we saw which one is the best performing. We are going to step number 5, which is changing the USP order, changing the order of the screens. Like if we will actually use these specific messages first, or these specific messages first can actually have a very significant impact. So that's the next stage in the process. Once we have that already refined, so we saw what were the right type of design style, and then what was the orientation, and that one was the USP order, which means the order of the screenshots, and making sure that all of those were optimized the best possible way. And we get all of the learnings about what didn't perform for us, and it's even more important than just having a winner. Now we know how to actually design the right video for them. And then we are crafting the videos, both on portrait and landscape. We are seeing how that will actually impact the CVR. Even if we created using all of the best practices, we are always testing before we are launching a new video. We're testing how it looks like the conversion before and after, kind of the implementing, to make sure that it all kind of continue showing the right growth trajectory. And once that's done, then we are moving to the next section, which is the icon test, testing 3 different directions, seeing what has the best possible outcome. And based on that, we are kind of defining and making sure that this is kind of good to go. If you want to see how those type of designs look like really, really fast, I can show you in the next slide. This is what we've done for Food Network. So in this specific case, this is an ABCD test. So A and C are kind of identical, just like portrait and landscape, and B and D are another set of sets of screenshots. In here, we came up with 2 different hypotheses. A and C, the hypothesis was that it's all about the love of food, and if it's about the love of food, you're going to see chocolate dripping from the device into the dish. You will be seeing the chefs injecting the content into the app, and the pizza coming out of the screen, and like many things that are going to be really appealing for the foodies. And on B and D, if it's not about the love of food and it's about the entertainment, so we are just showing the best possible way of showing the stars of the show, the best performing shows of the network, and just presenting them, showing that the user can actually streamline more than 10,000 episodes right from their app. So I don't care who will win in here. I don't care if it's going to be A or C, or if it's going to be B or D. We came up with 2 different hypotheses, and the idea is to test and to learn and to see what our audience is actually responding better to. And in this specific case, if we are moving to the next slide, you'll be able to see that we started with landscape, because landscape usually on iOS actually performs better. And in here, this is a perfect example for the worst outcome that you can have from a test, where we're actually taking A, which is what you see on the left. This is the non-designed version that the client had publicly, and then B and C were the new versions. So B was the sexy food approach, and C was the entertainment approach, the top 5 shows. And you can see that both B and C actually lost by 23.4% and lost by 14.4%, 17.4%. We said, okay, wait a minute, are we really not getting our audience, or is it something else? And one of the hypotheses that we came up when starting to run that, we said, wait a minute, let's stop the test. Even though it was only 500 samples, we can already see that this is a very significant, like the statistical significance was extremely high. Let's pause the test and let's rethink. We thought about that, and we said, okay, maybe one of the things that the users will actually want to see is a bit more information and not just showing one main asset. So we flipped the test, and then if you are moving to the next section, you'll be able to see that this is exactly the same design, just on portrait. And in portrait, the sexy food approach was actually winning by 4.3%. And basically, if we weren't testing the orientation of both portrait and landscape, just flipping the same asset from landscape to portrait, here you go, 28% difference, which is insane. I can't understand that. I can just see that, again, when you are looking at the users actually want to see more than just one value in this specific case. And in the current set of screenshots, they have kind of 3 screens that they can see. So they can see 2 marketing messages and 3 screens. And that made them feel much more comfortable about downloading the app. Now, I don't have to agree with them. I just know that I can now analyze why and what actually happened there. And in here, you can just see that if we were just pausing the campaign or just stopping the A/B testing in the previous set, we would just throw the sexy food approach kind of to the garbage. And it is the best performing approach in here. We just by flipping the orientation, we managed to find that this is the right result. So these are really things that this is kind of the perfect storm for SplitMetrics, just for example, to show you how important it is to keep on testing. And a lot of times you're coming with the right hypothesis, but just the orientation can flip the entire test. And this is something that is extremely important to test. If we are moving to another example, and the last example before I'm kind of changing the subject and kind of bringing you some more things in here. We're talking about Google Maps. So this is kind of the journey that we went with Google Maps. The first option that you can see all of the brand colors, the bright brand colors. This was kind of the version before we started working with them. And then we came up with 2 different options for Google Maps. One is on the go, showing how the users are actually going from one place to another. And the lower part is where you can actually see that you can navigate by foot, by car, by bicycle, or by bus, no matter how you go with maps. And this was the notion on that option. We tested the 3 options, and we saw that the lowest one in here was the winning one by a very, very significant number. Having said that, it was a huge mess to localize that. So the team there wanted to keep on iterating, said, well, if we would need now to do 30 localizations of that specific winning set, it's going to be a mess. Let's continue iterating and see if we will be able to find something that's going to be easier to localize. So we went on and kept on testing. The next slide, you will be able to see kind of tilted devices, brand colors on a lot of different types. We tested a lot of different things around these kind of blurred background, so it will be much easier to localize. And no matter what we've done, the left was keep on winning in a very, very significant result. So we said, okay, we cannot fight with that after our own 13 versions. It's enough. We have a winner. We don't like the fact that this is the winner just because it's a bit more messy to localize it, but it's such a statistical significant winner. We have to use that. So we started to do the localization for that, and that you will be able to see in the next slide. Obviously, when doing the localization in the US and in the UK, you'll be able to see that it's very similar. It was just different things around the location itself. It's the same ethnicity, but if you're moving to the next slide, you'll be able to see that we are also changed the ethnicity and done all of the culturalization of each and every one of those assets within in Germany, different showing different people and showing different types of even the bus colors and all of those things are very, very specific in here. We saw that these were the winning assets. It was working great for us, and then iOS 12 came to market. So this is the next slide of showing you how we saw that landscape was starting to outperform on portrait. We flipped that and said, okay, so we have the winner. We saw all of the things that we learned so far, amazing results. Let's get that and try to flip that onto landscape. Just by flipping the orientation from portrait to landscape, we managed to get another 39% higher conversion rate. For a company as big as Google, that could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars comparing to their huge, huge, huge marketing budget. And that's exactly the reason why in the next slide, you will be able to see that this was the next the live set for them for the next 2 years. So doing all of those tests on and scale, it's really, really important to maximize each and every impact and making sure that we are maximizing the budget on mobile growth in general using conversion optimization. Back to you, my friend.
Thank you, Gilad. It was very interesting, I think. And I wonder, like, maybe please share in the chat what assets do you test the most, guys? Just write like what type of assets do you test the most and which ones give you the biggest conversion rate improvement if you do tests already. So moving on, we're still talking about how to build the right testing strategy, and I think another important thing here is to choose the right testing methods. Let's compare 3 testing methods: classic, sequential, and multi-armed A/B testing. So let's start with classic. Its principles are pretty straightforward. So you define a baseline conversion and MDE. You calculate a sample size you need for a meaningful experiment with a specialized calculator. You start driving traffic, and then you evaluate the results of your A/B test. If the difference in performance between variations reached MDE and exceeded it, you can consider that the hypothesis of your experiment is proven right. Otherwise, it's necessary to start the test from scratch. So with classic A/B testing, there are quite a few strict rules that you have to follow. So first, the test cannot be finished. It can be finished only when each variation was visited by the necessary number of users, and necessary can be quite a lot. And then the higher your baseline conversion rate is, the less traffic you need to find a statistically significant difference. And the higher the expected conversion lift is, the less traffic you need. A considerable amount of required traffic isn't the only issue with classic A/B testing. A lot of managers violate core principles, like they make conclusions before reaching the necessary sample size for all variations and finish the experiment earlier, or worse, they keep stopping and launching one of the alternatives multiple times within one A/B test, which obviously compromises the results. To put it shortly, classic A/B tests are expensive. They require enormous sample size at times, and they're not flexible, as in you cannot stop them whenever you need to, and they imply strict rules. Luckily, there are 2 more ways to do A/B testing. So here's sequential A/B testing. The essence of this method is that it compares a particular variation with one or multiple alternatives and determines the winner. In simple terms, the algorithm sends 50% of traffic to the control and 50% to a variation, the challenger. You run a test until you reach statistical significance, then get a winning variation, and you can apply your knowledge. So let's talk about advantages of this method. It allows you to check the significance level during testing. You spend less time on experiments than with classic A/B testing, and you learn more about the performance of all variations. And obviously, you know the winner in the end. Let's talk about use cases for this method. It's perfect when you are seeking to identify variations with statistical significance. Like, for example, if you are at the pre-launch stage and still working on a new app or game, you might want to gather as much information as possible on the performance of your creatives, especially screenshots, to better understand which features are more important for you, for your target audience. And further, you can incorporate these learnings into your app. And you can use it if you'd like to analyze the performance of all variations after an experiment is finished. For example, sequential with SplitMetrics enable you to analyze how users behave on your App Store product page, what elements draw their attention, whether they tend to scroll through your screenshots and watch your app previews before pressing the download button or leaving the page. So sequential A/B testing informs you what to do after the experiment, which variation the winner should be leveraged, while multi-armed bandit testing, which we're going to talk of a little bit later, informs you what to do with traffic right now. It allocates traffic among all variations in the course of an experiment. So another use case is when you strive to integrate findings from all variations to make critical business decisions. So sequential A/B testing distributes traffic equally and shows you the winner. And this knowledge can be integrated into your App Store product page or used for other purposes. For example, if you test 3 variations of screenshots for different characters for a game, for instance, with sequential, you will know the winner and also the stats for the other 2 variations, which will give you insights on users' relation to these characters. So let's talk about the other method, multi-arm banded or MUB. To begin with, MUB testing is not just one kind of testing. There's an entire class of algorithms. And the essence of MUB is that, unlike sequential approach based on testing of statistical hypotheses, it continuously learns from data during experiments and increases the amount of traffic for better performing variations while decreasing traffic for the underperforming ones. So basically, MUB testing ensures that during an experiment, the number of conversions will be maximized. By focusing on improving conversions, it moves statistical significance to the background. So the main focus of MUB testing is in optimizing overall conversions, while sequential A/B testing is aimed at finding out the performance of all variations. However, there are many MUB algorithms. So let's concentrate on one. If we are talking SplitMetrics, we here use the algorithm called Thomas sampling or randomized probability matching. This method is basically an equivalent to Bayesian MUB approach and is considered the best one by mathematicians. I don't know why, but they think so, so let's agree with them. While sequential A/B testing names a winner, which is undoubtedly a big plus, MUB testing implemented as SplitMetrics allocates traffic among alternatives in an optimum way. So it estimates the conversion rate for each variation and distributes traffic accordingly. The better the conversion rate, the more traffic a variation gets. Let's talk about advantages. First, you minimize loss, since MUB sends traffic to variations with higher CVR. Then you don't miss out on opportunities. MUB estimates variations performance in the live mode, which gives a chance to the currently underperforming variations. You don't need to wait until an experiment reaches statistical significance because, again, traffic won't be distributed to variants with weak CVR. And, well, if you prefer Bayesian, then SplitMetrics MUB testing is definitely a great way for you. So use cases. MUB is perfect for you if you're seeking to maximize conversions, obviously. Then it's also good if you're optimizing for a time-limited offer like seasonal testing or headlines testing. For example, if you're testing creatives with new features dedicated to Halloween or Christmas and offer some bonuses to users who will download your app during this period, you don't have much time for gathering statistical significant results. Also, if headlines are like the perfect use case for MUB because news have short lifetime and MUB tests can determine quickly which headline is better. Another use case is when you're limited in the amount of traffic. So with sequential, you need as much traffic as it takes to get statistical significance, and in case you don't have enough traffic, MUB testing will help you identify better performing variations much quicker, and these variations will get most of the traffic. If you're targeting your specific audience, also you can use MUB because it's a fast learner, which applies the targeting rules you've specified to users that better fit your common audience while continuing to experiment with less common audiences. So as you can see, the choice depends on your goals. So the better you'll define your goals, the easier it will be for you to choose the optimum method. Let's check what you wrote in the chat, like which screenshots, which elements you test. Screenshots, app preview, yeah. Okay, there are a lot of questions. Let's get back to it during Q&A. Let's move forward then and talk about live results matching the test results. I'm going to mute myself again.
Amazing. Thank you, Maria. So basically, when we are looking at kind of creating the ultimate test strategy, we're starting from a very progressive kind of test plan. And just like Maria mentioned, we want to make sure that we are kind of going through the goals of the client and trying to understand even where to test that. Should it be on the product page, or should it be on a search page? If we want to impact organic, it will be very different than impacting the paid side of things, just because the layout will be different, and based on that, the statistical significance of the test will be a bit different for each and every one of those goals. Once we understand, okay, we want to test that in the product page or in the search page, and kind of how we want to actually create that, we are going with calculate the minimum sample size. Usually, we like to work with at least 5,000 samples per variant to make sure that it is statistically significant. If we can stop the test after 3,000 or 2,000 samples already because of the amazing platform that SplitMetrics kind of allow us to save on that, amazing. But a lot of times we do have to keep on running the test, and it will be very, very, very close by, because if the changes are minor, a lot of times it's going to be very, very, very short one another. So we won't be able to conclude the test before actually getting at least 5,000 samples per variant. Once we have that, we are going into the setting and kind of running the test itself. Usually, as I mentioned, we are using Facebook as the traffic source for that. When we are doing that with Facebook, please don't use lookalike audiences. It's not the right type of simulator of audience like you do on the search page. Which means if we want to actually try to optimize toward the App Store optimization side, which means getting us more organic users, we need to bring up traffic that is more like organic. So it could be not just your target audience that is 35 to 40, which is the best performing one for you. It could be 20 to 50, just for example, because these are people that are searching for these search queries in the App Store. And we want to get a very similar result to what we will have on the App Store. So setting up and running the test with, just for example, don't use your best performing banners. If you're going to be using the best performing banners and it's very, very similar to A or to B, it will lean toward the users. It will look like a more coherent kind of a funnel from the banner to the best performing screenshot. And it's not necessarily that it's going to be like that once you're going to implement that in real life, which means we need to have very neutral kind of banners that won't going to lean you toward A or B. We want to make sure that we are not contaminating the test, and we are doing that properly. When we are doing that in Facebook, we are trying to be a bit broader than the usual, and making sure that we are very kind of cautious about the type of banners that we are utilizing, just so we will be able to get the right results. And when we're doing that as the mobile success agency, it's really hard for us to say, wait a minute, we have the best performing banners in here. We know already what are the right segments for us, but it's not the right thing to do on the test itself. When we're talking about in-test optimization, the in-test optimization geared toward getting us as many positive samples, so from click to actually people that are hitting the get button that wants to download the product. So we're trying to optimize that during the test, just so we will be able to get more positives and actually getting a higher conversion rate to try to match that the best that we can to the real results of the conversion in the App Store, Google Play Store. Once we are doing that and we are getting enough samples, we are getting to statistical significance, we are making sure that we are doing a very detailed test report, which SplitMetrics allow you to have a huge amount of metrics that we can actually see where the user made the decision to download, when they made the decision to drop, why did they actually made those decisions. So it's not just A is better than B, we also have here the why, which is so important even if the test lost. And then once we have that in place, we want to make sure that we are implementing the winner in the App Store and Google Play Store, and actually measuring that before and after also in live in the App Store. So we will make sure that this is coherent to what we saw on the test. From what we saw, if you're running the test properly, the level of accuracy later on is very, 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 very high. Usually it's more than 95%, and this is exactly why we are utilizing SplitMetrics to make sure that we will have the data, the most proper way of getting the data, so we will be able to maximize the impact of conversion optimization. Moving back to you, I think, Maria, we can move to the next section.
Yep. Okay. So another part of like getting live results to match the test results is choosing the appropriate tools. So you all probably heard of creative sets in Apple Search Ads and Google Experiments. as tools for A/B testing. They do have their advantages, but I'd like to point out when you shouldn't go with these tools. So let's take a closer look at Google Experiments. It is a prominent A/B testing tool for sure. It's free. It supports tests of app description in 5 languages and enables tests in paid and organic traffic. However, there's a challenge. At some point, it just becomes insufficient for conversion rate growth. You hit certain limitations, so let's talk about these 8 bottlenecks that indicate that it's time to move on. So A/B tests via Google Play Experiments differ from the ones from paid traffic sources, like lack of data on user behavior. There's no average time spent on page and no screenshot scroll through, etc. Also, there are only 5 A/B testing experiments available at a time, and you can test only app page visuals. Also, there are no tests on the search and category pages, and you cannot compare the performance of your app to your competitors. Also, there are no pre-launch tests, and surely you cannot test your iOS app in Google Play Experiments. So, moving on, let's talk about creative sets in Apple Search Ads, which is a great way of empowering Apple Search Ads and improving audience response to it. Nevertheless, there are limitations in terms of proper A/B testing. Firstly, test results are only applicable to Apple Search Ads where user behavior is quite specific. For example, the average banner tap-through rate is twice lower compared to the results of genuine top position in App Store search, like 7.11% against 19.29% according to TTR benchmarks. Then these test results can't be applied to app product pages because they don't allow you to experiment with crucial product page elements like an app icon, name, or promo text, etc. Then you can use only screenshots and app previews from your product page with a limit up to 10 images. And their fixed order will also restrict your experimenting options. What's more, creative sets are bound to keywords, which makes results interpretation tricky. So it's impossible to tell which screenshot or app preview combination outperforms the others. So it's hard to measure the statistical significance, and the sample size for testing with Apple Search Ads should be calculated manually, which is difficult. And there's also lack of user behavior insights, like there's no average view duration or how many users installed your app after the preview, what video episode triggers the majority of installs, etc., etc. And how many tests you can run at a time is limited by the number of existing creative sets. Also, it's quite time consuming. So to change a concept, you need to update a product page. Also, it's impossible to run pre-launch tests, which is quite important. And also wanted to show you this example. It's a vivid example of why you can't apply Google Experiments results for iOS, and the same with creative sets for Android. This is a comparison showing a huge win on Android, up to 15.6%, while losing on iOS by 2.4%. So, which tools to use? Well, I would strongly recommend to use professional A/B testing platforms. Obviously, I would recommend SplitMetrics. There are a lot of reasons to use it. Firstly, there's a great variety of A/B tests. You can test icons, screenshots, video previews, description, multivariate combinations, and so on and so forth. Also, there's an unlimited number of experiments for iOS and Android, and there are 3 testing environments. You can test on product, search, and category pages. And there are in-depth behavioral analytics. Every single click and scroll can be tracked. Also, there's advanced segmentation, allowing you to track the difference in conversion by gender, age, and so on and so forth. Also, competitive intelligence allows you to analyze your rival's CVR and compare against their apps, which would give you valuable insights. And there's seamless integration with all current tracking tools. And also, we provide full guidance by ISO experts, and 2 different testing methods are available to choose from. So consider this variant. Let's talk about how to win without a winner. Naturally, users of A/B testing platforms expect to find a variation with better conversion right away because they're using the right tool, they're doing everything correctly. Where's the winner? Well, from our experience, getting a winner in the very first A/B test is highly unlikely, unfortunately. Yeah, I'm sorry to say that. A/B testing, you see, it's a continuous process. So you gotta like be prepared to test, and test. Moreover, we've seen many clients getting into a curious psychological trap. When they don't get a winner, they may be biased towards the new variation just because they invested resources in the new design. But new design is not necessarily better. So to exclude the psychological factor, we suggest referring to the stats gathered throughout an A/B test. No winner A/B tests, while they don't give you the top converting variation, they give you plenty of stats. And these valuable insights, they may be the basis for new hypotheses and further A/B testing experiments. So I'm not going to show you the whole workflow of interpreting these metrics, but I'm going to show you a few examples. So let's say you are running an A/B test with two identical variations that differ in second screenshot, like here on this slide. In such cases, you usually look into direct installs. So SplitMetrics tracks a direct install when user taps get without any page interaction. Here's what the experiment's stats show. You can see that more direct installs happened upon viewing variation B than A. So it might be that screenshot number 2, the only element that differs across the variation, was so good at converting into get. But keep in mind that in such cases, one screenshot for the first few screenshots can result in such an improvement if the difference between the two concepts is prominent. This step in our platform is actually very cool, I just have to say it, as only by looking at these bars you can understand what to optimize next. If, for example, there are more direct installs than installs per screenshot scroll overall, then page visitors tend to install your app without scrolling screenshots. Therefore, it makes sense to focus on optimizing the first two screenshots. In the opposite situation, you have to focus on the entire screenshots gallery rather than on the first two only. Then there's installs per read more. Normally this metric doesn't exceed 1%. So if it's above the benchmark, you should definitely consider A/B testing your description. Moving on to the next slide. In the screenshots tab of our platform, there's even more stats related to visuals. So in the following example, clients A/B tested two screenshot galleries that differed in the first screenshot only. So look at the installs after viewing screenshot data. If compared across two variations, the metrics are pretty close for screenshot 2 and 3, 10 versus 11 and 28 versus 26. But obviously screenshots 3 in both variations perform better than screenshots 2. And this is where you get an optimization insight. So you might want to swap screenshot 2 and 3 and run another A/B test. These are only a few examples of what you can find with no winner A/B tests. And obviously each case will be specific, but as you can see, there's a lot to learn even when you don't get a winner. Moving on to another point, I'm gonna mute myself.
Amazing. So just one more note that could be very valuable for you guys. We have up to 10 screenshots on the App Store. Now, the App Store actually enable you guys to have much more screenshots than what you think that you might need. Most of this, the users actually seeing the first kind of 2 screenshots around 70%. And then if you're seeing all the way to the 5th or 6th screenshot, you will see that it's only like 20%, 10% of the users will actually get as deep as there. So you might ask yourself, hey, why should I actually invest in creating a very long type of a screenshot set? And the answer for that is that on iOS, you can actually bid different bids on Apple search ads and utilizing specific, just for example, if you're talking about Google Maps, example, and for Google Maps, let's say that we want to highlight the fact that you can navigate with offline maps. So this is a very, very specific feature. This is not one of the first slides that we will put on as what is Google Maps and what it enables you to do. But then if we are targeting offline maps as a keyword, we can say that with using Apple search ads to decide what will be the order of the screens that are going to be displayed for that specific search term. And then we can decide that for this specific search term, we will show screenshot number 1, 3, and 9. And in 9, we will actually talk about the fact that you can also download the maps offline. Then when you're navigating to a new city, you don't have to have an internet connection in order to navigate there. So this is the perfect example showing you why utilizing the long set of screenshots will actually enable you to get a very dedicated set of order of the screens for each and every keyword that you are prioritizing, and based on that, get a higher conversion rate, which will also signal the algorithm of the App Store and Google Play Store. In this specific case, it's only the App Store, to actually show that we are more relevant for this specific search query. It's a really, really cool hack, and this is something that will just help you to get a higher conversion rate. And when doing App Store optimization, it will just give you another kind of boost comparing to your competitors. So definitely it's something that we are utilizing, and this is a great best practice for Apple search ads. And another thing that when you're thinking about that, you can actually A/B test the order of the screenshots for that specific keyword. So you can actually play with that and try to see exactly what will have the best relevance order of the screenshots for this specific keyword. And therefore, if you are utilizing Apple search ads, which is a great platform, it will be just another way of maximizing the results using your mobile growth methodologies. Back to you, Maria.
Okay, thank you for this wonderful insight. We're almost finishing. This is our last talking point before the Q&A. I hope you guys are not falling asleep by now. It's been 50 minutes of a lot of information. Hold on, there's a little left. So let's talk about conversion rate optimization throughout app lifecycle. So improving conversion rate will definitely increase the install rate of your app, and most importantly, optimize the cost of acquiring users. So what are the ways to achieve this wonderful conversion rate optimization? Let's talk about it depending on the stage of your app. So let's talk about it depending on the stage, and start with pre-launch, when it all mostly revolves around market research. So at pre-launch, you can test various app ideas, like on actual users, to identify if your potential app stands a chance in the severe competition. Nobody clicks get button on the emulated app product page with your A/B test, it's just a waste of time to release this idea. So basically, it's testing the market without building an MVP. Then you can identify high-performing concepts. For example, Heat App Masquerade relied on pre-launch A/B testing with SplitMetrics and ran a series of experiments that helped to choose between two different concepts. Like, did you know that this well-known app with live masks could have become a masseter? Yeah. The face app idea got 35% better conversion rate, and the team went in this direction. But yeah, we could have had a messenger instead. Then you can find proper positioning. A/B testing at pre-launch helps you come up with positioning which hits a chord with potential users. For example, we helped Wanna Nails validate their positioning for their iOS app. The title featuring the phrase "manicure try on" clearly explained app essence and beat other variations, 26.4% conversion rate improvement. Also, choosing the right category may play an important part, especially for gaming apps. For instance, one of our clients, a game publisher, experimented with the message of their first screenshot. One variation focused on strategic aspect of the game, while the other positioned the app as a shooter. And the first message won with 12% better conversion, making it clear which subcategory to choose. Then you can experiment with the target audience. With the help of deep segmentation, it's possible to identify which group is interested in your future product. And experimenting with targeting, you can collect data on preferable age, sex, location for your further marketing activity. Also, you can validate various ad channels. Yep, A/B testing helps with that too. It's possible to qualify different ad channels like news, Facebook, cross-promo, or various ad networks. Thus, you can allocate your marketing budget more effectively once your app is live. And you can prioritize sub features. So you can choose like a must-have feature and then prioritize the rest. Let's get back to Masquerade as an example. At deciding to create a face mask app, their team kept on testing and found out that the audience was 55% more interested in live masks than in face swap feature. This insight helped their dev team to devote all energy to potentially viral feature, and it worked. So also you can test different mobile UI design, since it may become an important contributing factor when it comes to popularity. So why not check which interface layout triggers more clicks, since all it takes is preparing like a few sets of screenshots which represent various UI concepts and launching an A/B test. Then you can polish store product page before the launch. You see, sometimes the first days in the App Store may predefine the future of your app, and isn't it great to be able to debut with a store with a pitch perfect icon, screenshots, and also a video app preview. On top of that, you can optimize other elements such as app name and subtitle and etc. For instance, A/B testing at pre-launch with SplitMetrics helped Rovio get 2.5 million additional installs in just a week after launch of Angry Birds 2. They tested generic screenshots versus screenshots with game characters and color frame, and screenshots with familiar characters won. You can also create an email base of potential users. Like if you're using a tool like SplitMetrics, you can collect emails of your potential users and build a primary base of your app early adopters and send them emails like surveys, etc. So there are two approaches to choose from: app-centric and audience-centric when we talk about pre-launch A/B testing. So app-centric is when you already have an app idea or concept that you want to test, and audience-centric is obviously when you build a business around a certain target audience. Thus, your goal is to come up with an app that will resonate with them rather than create a certain relatively performant app. So in the case of app-centric approach, it makes sense to start with experiments which contain only one variation reflecting your core idea via a set of screenshots, title, subtitle, icon, and short description. Don't forget about deep segmentation of your traffic, like use ad groups with individual UTMs. Since deep segmentation is what can help you identify your primary target audience, the more granular the better, and later you can evaluate an ad group which was the most interesting and evaluate its monetization prospects. Also, you can evaluate performance across ad channels, like deep segmentation helps out here once again, making it possible to identify the most efficient traffic sources. Another metric to pay attention here is to pay attention to bounce rate. This metric is a touchstone of your ad campaign settings. In case of serious bounce rate, check if your ad banners correlate with the message of the emulated app product page. Also, there's Explored section. It lets you see at which point of product page exploration people bounce. Thus, you can see what elements and aspects of your app draw potential users away. Let's get back a little. So, once you opt for a certain app concept, target audience, and ad channels, it's a good idea to get down to polishing your product page elements like icons, screenshots, name, etc. And this time it's better to run experiments with 2 or more variations. Moving forward. When it comes to the audience-centric approach, it's vital to pay extra attention to tailoring your App Store creatives or ad banners to tastes of your primary target audience. For example, it's unlikely that minimalistic monochrome UI of your potential app depicted in screenshots will win over teenagers. So if you know that you want to attract teenagers, start testing with bright colors and cheerful vibe right away. Whatever approach you choose, it's important to understand that pre-launch A/B testing is a complex procedure and one test is hardly ever enough. But in general, pre-launch can be a real pre-launch A/B testing can be a real game changer. Let's talk about testing at the launch or discovery stage. So what you can do, you can boost conversion rate. How? For example, for game publishers, the major CVR improvements come from optimizing screenshots and previews of your game. However, our findings shows that 2 and more videos may decrease the conversion rate. So you might want to check the hypothesis that you could perform better on the App Store with no videos whatsoever. For app publishers, first 2 screenshots play the most important role, and you should also test app's name. The better it describes functionality, the higher the CVR is. You can improve the conversion rate by adding the brand name to your games or apps name on the App Store or Google Play. However, it might work for big brands in the first place. Also, you should take into account seasonality, like adding 2 snowflakes to your icon or screenshots before the Christmas holidays might make a big difference. Also, you can analyze users' behavior for future improvements, like see what they do on your apps page and how they react to different elements, and compare your expectations to reality, and also use these insights for building product's future roadmap. Then you can compare your app to competitors. You see, with SplitMetrics testing platform, you can track your app's conversion in search results when displayed next to your rivals. Then you can replicate App Store experience with search and category tests and analyze your competitors' conversion rate. Let's talk about post-launch, or the stage where you want to scale. So you obviously can conquer new markets by localizing your app without a conversion drop when you do A/B tests. For example, one of our clients, game publisher ZMAD, managed to achieve impressive 36% conversion uplift by localizing App Store screenshots of their game Bubble Birds 4 for a Japanese audience. Our other client, 53, used split testing to localize their paper app for the Chinese-speaking market. Their used screenshots in Chinese with multicolored backgrounds had 33% better conversion than the English ones. Another thing you can do is you can check if the new positioning will increase installs. Like sometimes your app can outgrow the initial positioning, or you may need to cover new segments of your audience. And in such case, A/B testing will allow to test assets before uploading to Real Store to avoid conversion drop. And you can also find the best positioning. Take our client Hubnob, for example. They experienced a significant decline in performance after rebrand, and they turned to A/B testing to fix this problem. So they started with an icon test and managed to find the icon that performed 64% better than the rebranded one. Yeah, they could have saved so much money. They went on with even more experiments for 5 months of app optimizing to restore and improve their conversion rate. Then you can keep an eye on trends and adapt accordingly. For example, now big and bold font is trending. But just 2 years ago, thin font was in fashion. Also, illustrations are in high demand now, but again, everything can change. So it's better to keep an eye on things. And this is what you can do while A/B testing. So this is pretty much it. And I think we're ready to start our Q&A. I hope you're still not asleep and all here. Let's check your questions. Do you usually test descriptions in iOS? So the description has lower impact on conversion rate, but you can. Description with CTA can increase conversion rate. So we do test it in the storefront, in ASO, and yeah. I don't know, maybe you want to take the next one, Gilad.
Yes, I think that basically when we're thinking about testing any kind of descriptions and stuff like that, this is something that you definitely want to test that, but just using, again, the App Store optimization methodology and not specifically with the testing platform. The testing platform definitely is very, very relevant for all of the graphical assets and less for the text. You can, by the way, you can test the title of the app by itself, but usually the impact, even if it's very positive from the conversion rate, but it's very negative on the ASO side, like you won't going to get you the same discoverability. You want to focus, I think, with the testing platform to use icons, screenshots, preview video. That will probably just get you the best possible results. I think that I can also answer the one for Google Maps. So on Google Maps, I saw the question, when did you run the initial test? Was it only in the US or worldwide? And how do we actually set that when we're pushing that globally? So basically, it really depends on the main key market of our client. In this specific case, we tested heavily on the US because we knew that this was the biggest market of the client. And besides that, we prioritize another 3 or 4 markets based on their priorities. So usually we're testing on the biggest market, which has the best impact. And then if you have any kind of very strategic element regarding the Japanese market or the Brazilian market, just for example, then for them, we would probably do another set of testing and test specifically on those specific areas, because you can't really do 14 different sets of screenshots for each and every localization. It's going to be insane amount of testings, and you'll need a team of like 500 people to be able to manage that. The way that we are usually doing that is prioritizing on the key market, based on the key market, seeing which was the best performing one, doing localization for the rest of the world. And if we have any kind of strategic areas, we're also doing a very specific tailor-made screenshots for them. The Japanese market, I think, is the wildest market that really different color themes, very like, anime and many other components going to be kind of key there. Very different colors than the rest of the world. And if you have the capacity investing in creating very tailor-made sets of screenshots for this specific market, it will be looking very, very differently. It won't going to be just a localized version of the same winner on the Western world. But I think that this is kind of how we are doing that and trying to do that in the most cost-effective way, because obviously each and every test, we will need testing budget from Facebook, bringing them to the testing platform, paying for the testing platform, paying for managing that test, and actually making sure that we are getting to statistical significance. And it is a lot of work, so we want to make sure that we are focusing on the biggest markets possible that will give us the best possible growth.
Yep, perfect answer. So, are you recommending testing the icon alone? At some point, it may be expensive to go over a SplitMetrics test for an icon. Also, it doesn't include impact on CVR. CVR, how do you measure it? Tests of one element, for example, an icon, gives a more clear result, actually. For example, if you test icon with screenshots, results could be different because screenshots have their own impact. So it's better, I guess, to isolate different assets while testing. Okay, how do you track conversion from App Store to Play Store? Does Apple and Google offer an API? App Store and Play Store have their own tools to track conversion on consoles.
Yeah, I don't think it really works with too much of APIs. Usually, we're just integrating that with the MMP. So if you have an apps flyer or Adjust or Kochava or Branch.io or whatever that you're utilizing for the UA, we are usually just tracking that. So we are getting a tracking link of that, and then we can actually see what happens post the fact that someone is actually pressing on the get button within the SplitMetrics platform. The challenge that you do have there, like, we are not trying to get the lowest cost per download on the test. Like the test itself, because we are adding another layer, so we are getting a user from Facebook, just for example, to SplitMetrics. They're tapping on the get button on the winning version, and then they're going back to the App Store to actually download the app. So we don't expect to get a good cost per download there, because we are adding another step to the funnel. Having said that, we can actually track the value of those users, like if they're actually later on subscribing, for example, which could add a lot of value later on, but it's kind of in a deeper funnel. So if you have a cost per registered user, loyal users, paying users, so we can actually go much deeper than just the cost per download on those tests, but those tests need much bigger sample size in order to do that well.
Yep. If you have a control and a challenger, would you always recommend doing an A/B test, or are there any advantages doing an A/B test? Well, when the results between control and the challenger from A/B test have not a great difference, it's better to test ABB or AAB test. Yep. Do you want to take the next one, or like how? Or I can do it. How to differentiate a search page or product page on App Store and Play Store? Please elaborate.
Yeah.
Search page, it's a page on App Store or Play Store with search results in your app with competitors. And product page, it's an app page with icon screenshots, description, user reviews, etc. It's main store page for an app where user can click, get, install, and download your app.
Yeah, I tried to answer that while I was muted. I'm sorry about that. But just regarding the search page and product page, basically, if you're thinking about the search page, when you're going into the App Store and searching for any specific query, you're going into the search page. You're going to see your app first, and then right next to it, you're going to see all of your competitors. And the user can make a decision to download right there. So they can download you and then continue scrolling, download your best competitor, and then the next competitor, and just download 3 apps in this specific quick scroll. When you think about the product page, this is where you're driving all of your users. Like when you're driving all of your users in an app campaign, you're always getting them directly to the app page itself, because this is exactly where you want to make sure that the users will tap only the download button in your app and not actually showing them your biggest competitor. And this is why you're driving them to the product page. So if your goal is to actually increase the conversion rate on organic traffic, you will use the search page. If your goal is to actually increase the conversion rate for the paid efforts, you would probably use the product page, because this is how the funnel will actually go. Or the organic will go through the search query, and the paid traffic will usually go directly to the product page. So it's a very different type of testings, just because the layout is different for each and every one of those pages.
Okay, so we have one last question, I guess. Does A/B testing for various creative sets happens in parallel, like it happens on Android? Or we test first creative sets and then second, and after that we have the comparison available. Tests can run in parallel, different countries, target traffic, etc. There are no more questions. So I guess we can wrap up. Thanks everybody for watching. I hope you found it interesting. Yeah, have a great day or evening, whatever is your time zone. Thanks everybody. We'll definitely send a follow-up with the recording and separately the presentation. So
yeah, and if you want to get in touch, you have both of me and Maria's details on the last slide. So you'll be able to kind of just hit us an email, and we would love to help with any specific request.
Yep. I won't show you the last slide because it's too much search between all the tabs. You'll see it in the follow-up. Don't worry. It's SplitMetrics and Moburst, Google. Thank you, Gilad. It was amazing and very insightful. And thank you, everybody, for watching. Have a great day. Bye. I'm ending the broadcast. Bye-bye.
Bye.